If there's anything that holds the highest value in the game, it's the gameplay and how its systems play into it. The graphics can be amazing, the story exhilarating, but the gameplay is what I found myself putting the most stock in. Now, gameplay can come in a variety of forms, of course. In Skyrim's case, the gameplay is the exploration, world design, and freedom. In Walking Dead series, it's how you flow through the branching storyline. In Relink, it's simpler. It's the combat. And it's this combat that takes center stage in everything that you do in the game. Here, the gameplay is king. For better and even for worse. What do I mean by even for worse? Well, let's continue and see if you can catch on. Firstly, you can tell that if there's anything they were trying to get right, it was the gameplay, the combat. It's fast-paced, action-packed, and most of all fun. Almost every aspect of the moment-to-moment combat feels satisfying, not just visceral and weighty attacks, but also perfect dodges, the perfect guards, and parries. The game rewards you for every action you take towards defeating an enemy, and every one of those actions feels tight, fluid, and responsive. Granblue Fantasy's Relink's gameplay, simply put, plays well. And to be a good game, that's honestly the main thing you really need. You can have the graphics, art direction, and incredible cutscenes, but the gameplay and how well it plays are what will keep people around for it. In Relink, combat is what you would do in 90% of your playthrough. If it didn't play well, then no one would stick around for it. On top of playing well, the game comes with a surprising variety of characters to play as, each one having their own basic combo, skills, even mechanics for the movesets revolve around. Catalina, for example, with her Ares gauge and combo-centric playstyle, plays completely different from Percival's charge attack and skill-focused moveset. Each character feels different to play, and they feel rewarding to master. And if there is a character you don't like, there are plenty more for you to choose from. I just wish there was a way you could try them out before you unlock them. But the most interesting thing about the combat for me is that the most rewarding and satisfying moments come from team plays. For example, the link attack. When the stagger meter on the boss or enemy is filled, they're opened up to a link attack, which is a coordinated strike from all 4 party members dealing massive damage and staggering them for a moment. Watching the Fury can get sent hurling back from this attack has never really gotten old for me, and these animations from the bosses only happen during these coordinated strikes in the burst, adding to that feel of the most powerful strikes being from when you work as a team. That stagger comes with a caveat though. Some characters such as Vazaraga, who has to be stationary to charge attacks, might have to cancel out their damage or just straight up miss. Fortunately, not all bosses are as exaggerative, and you'll get more hits than you'll miss, but I'm sure the ones who main such characters wish they had an alternative for those times that they do. Anyways, each link attack fills the link time gauge over to the right. You hit to 100% and you enter link time. Time is slowed and all attacks are increased, along with decreased skill cooldown, regen on HP, you name it. You always want to work together to get this out as often as possible because of the benefits. The thing about it is that joining a link time also benefits you on an individual level. On Catalina, join a link attack and you instantly can go into your combo finisher to fill your Ares gauge. Do so while the gauge is filled, and Ares will join you on the attack, dealing more damage and allowing you to combo into a coordinated set of attacks alongside Ares. If you're already in the middle of a combo with Ares, or just finished one, joining a link attack will extend your Ares combo for virtually free. Joining a link attack on Percival will give him access to quick charge right after, giving you the benefits you'd have to use a skill or go through a combo to achieve for free. They've made it so that joining these link attacks basically is a net positive in almost every situation for you. There's almost never a reason for you not to work with your team and join in. In fact, I would always feel like I made a mistake in missing it. There's even the ultimate attacks known as the Skybound Arts, which I will be referring to as SBA from now on. Each SBA used on a chain can chain into another characters until all are used for a final move known as the Burst. This is another one of those times where the boss will get tossed around by your attacks, even more so than even on the link attack. Even if only 2 people use the SBA, this will also result in a team attack, but for lesser damage. Using an SBA even charges others' SBAs. And then there's the coordination with crowd control skills. Certain characters can come with CC such as freeze, paralyze, or slow. Because of all the emphasis on team play, it never feels like a net negative to stop the boss in their tracks to allow your team to get some extra damage in. And with proper timing, you can chain these together to extend that window of opportunity for damage. Certain characters can also buff each other and debuff the enemy. There's even heals and resurrections that can be brought to the fold as well. Even with the emphasis on action, I never felt myself being discouraged to work with my party as a team. In fact, as explained, you obtain some of the biggest benefits and satisfaction from doing so. It's actually to the point that I got bored of certain characters because they don't bring much to the table in terms of team play outside of link attacks and bursts. I got spoiled and felt like I wasn't contributing much outside of just raw damage. There were even times when I would put certain party members on my team and forgot they were there because that was all they contributed. It didn't feel like they were there for the team until I reminded during a team burst. And I feel like that's the part that made me stick with the game, the emphasis on team play. After all, if I wanted to just deal damage, I'd just go back to Final Fantasy 16 for a more in-depth combat system geared towards a single fighter. Even the point system in the game, which is honor points you gain throughout the fight, isn't centered completely around just damage. It also factors in the buffs you contribute, the healing, and the other team mechanics, albeit to a lesser extent. There's also the shared critical gauge meter. When a party member's down, they eat out of this bar, which doesn't replenish. The critical meter reaching 0 means you lose. Reviving party members ensures they eat out less of it than they would otherwise. And so you're incentivized to not only revive down party members, but also to aid each other in ways to ensure less downs occur. Now, I've been sitting here praising a lot of this game for a good reason, but there are issues stemming from interesting design decisions, to say the least, which I'll get into in a moment. First, I think I need to go over the boss fights. They all typically have phases based on a meter under their HP bar, which fills based on how much damage they take. Think of it as working the same way as monsters become enraged in Monster Hunter World, except you can see when this will happen. Before that fills, they're in their normal phase where they're generally going through their basic moveset. When that bar fills though, that's when they go into overdrive. The boss then gains increased defense, goes into bloodlust before they start doing a series of mechanics unique to them. After they get done with their bloodlust mechanic, on to fighting an enraged boss who has increased defense and is far more aggressive. Dealing more damage depletes this overdrive bar and puts them into break, stunning for a time and leaving them open for extra damage. Keeping in mind this bar helps in coordinating how you and your team go about using their abilities. That way you can know what to expect and you don't find yourself wasting critical moments. The bloodlust states I mentioned come in a surprising variety of mechanics. These can range from Berserking combo to a Final Fantasy XIV style raid sequence, and can act as transitions to the next phase. I was actually surprised by the variety of mechanics from the bosses. These aren't just new types of AoEs to avoid, there will even be shifts in how you fight the boss entirely, and new strategies you can develop as a result. I can go on and on about each character on an individual level, but the point I'm trying to make is that side games had an emphasis on team-based combat and exhilarating encounters, and that's where their focus went. The side games, like I've been saying, gameplay is king. Even with its story, you can tell the dev team put together a series of fun, exhilarating gameplay moments they wanted to do, and then made a story to fit that all together. Now, I don't want to go thoroughly into the story here. I actually want to save this for a future video, as I'm fairly convinced this wasn't always meant to be a 10 to 12 hour story. I feel like there were plenty of remnants of content that may have been cut over the game's lifespan, possibly a sacrifice as they narrowed their focus to get this game finally finished and out the door. Anyways, this emphasis on gameplay, you spend little time in cutscenes and more in actual dungeons and encounters. The first cutscene is a short one that immediately puts you into a skirmish with the Wyverns before ending with an over-the-top boss battle. Following one more fantastical animated cutscene, you're immediately dropped into a dungeon, which also has a boss battle at the end. The plot points throughout the story merely serve to push you to the next fight, to get you to the fun part. The story itself does falter in overall writing as a result, but I feel that more so the fact that they did not want to commit to anything that would have any real impact on the characters, as that will affect the overall grand story. That's not to say the story is bad. Like I said, I will go into detail in the future video, but it does end up lacking the depth you'd expect from characters that develop it from beginning to end. Instead, one of the story's biggest strengths is the pacing, as a result of pushing you to the fun parts. Some of the best fights in the game in terms of pure spectacle are only playable in the story. Even as a first impression before you get into the meat content of the game, they wanted you to give you a fun, exhilarating experience. After all, gameplay is king here, and it's likely the reason you stick around after the story is complete. In fact, you will probably get to this point before you've fully interacted with and understood the gearing and other systems in the game. And as you get deeper into the game, you start to build your character further with sigils and whitestones, which act as gear pieces with effects that increase damage, health, etc. There's even effects like the increase to effectiveness of things like link attacks or SPA generation. Plenty of different sigils and whitestones to build your character to fit your playstyle. As you get further and further, you require sigils and whitestones with multiple effects, for one based on RNG. But the more I strayed from the combat and deeper into the underlying systems, the more the interesting design decisions I mentioned before started to rear up. Let's start off with parts of the combat I didn't mention. Later into the game, attacks start to one-shot you far more frequently, a complaint I often see online as a cheap form of difficulty. But let's look at the big picture for this. Remember when I said that some characters can equip healing spells? Well, you can also equip potions. Everyone has them, in fact. This on its own is no issue. This is something done in most other fantasy games. In turn-based games, on top of this resource itself, it might cost you a turn to use a potion. In an action game, it might be an animation, making you have to find the opportune moment to heal or create one. In others, it has a cooldown, ensuring you don't just face tank through all your potions and are actually punished for taking damage too frequently. In Final Fantasy XVI, for example, they have a low max and need to be bought at vendors. But in this game, there is no animation, no cooldown, no risk. In fact, they're instant, powerful, and can be used at any time. If you take an attack that deals 70% of your HP and sends you flying, you can heal yourself back to full with a button press before you even touch the ground. And it's not just a regular heal potion, you also have max HP potions, group heal potions, and revive potions. Everyone except the AI gets them, and they refill automatically for each mission. So they aren't even resources you have to buy, make, or worry about. You take damage, you press button. I think it's fair to say that these aren't actually potions, these are the rest of your HP. The only decision you're making with them is whether or not you want to have access to that HP. And with an item known as Potion Hoarder, which substantially increases the number of potions you get, you can further increase that HP with even the number of revive potions from 1 to 3. On top of that, you can acquire sigils known as Auto Revive and Guts. Guts puts you at 1 HP when an attack will otherwise incapacitate you. Auto Revive will revive you for free when you're incapacitated and doesn't count towards the team's critical gauge. You can even cheese don't get down objectives with it. You can equip both of these sigils at the same time, and they both reproc with the cooldown. They can trigger multiple times during a fight. And so let's view this from the boss's perspective. The boss has to first get through your guts, preferably with an attack that deals enough damage to one-shot you. That way, they can bypass your potions, which are the rest of your HP. If they don't one-shot, they'll have to get through those 10 plus potions first. After they force out your guts, that boss will now need to get through your auto revive before your guts comes back up. After it forces out your auto revive, it still has to down you before guts comes back up, which is likely coming closer to doing so. And it's also now racing against your auto revive. If it does manage to down you before then, the boss still needs to get through 3 revive potions before you even touch your critical gauge bar. And again, this needs to be done before auto revive and guts comes back up. After all that, it now needs to deplete that bar while racing against your auto revive and guts that keeps coming back. And it's not just you. They need to potentially do this to 3 other players at the same time. This is a 1v4 fight. Now you're probably thinking, well, you're obviously sacrificing something for all that survivability. Well, not really. Potion Hoarder, Auto Revive, and Guts can all proc on secondary slots on sigils, meaning you don't have to sacrifice much of anything for this to happen. Let's put this into perspective. You can have up to 12 equipable sigil slots. Each of those sigils can have 2 abilities. That means you really have 24 sigil slots. And if you upgrade one sigil, you upgrade both abilities. If you level up a damage sigil that has Potion Hoarder, you get more damage and more potions. And if you equip all 3 of what was mentioned, you only use up 3 out of 24 slots. With that in mind, is it a wonder that later bosses tend to have attacks that one-shot? Can you even call these one-shot attacks? Developers have to balance these fights with the possibility you roll in with these. If the boss isn't one-shotting, it's not making any real progress in beating you. At least not fast enough. Missions can last on average 5 minutes and under. The boss doesn't exactly have all the time in the world to take you down before you take it down. This is probably why Lucilius, the newest fight released recently, is designed the way he is. His basic attacks do enough damage that even one will warrant a healing potion, and they're constant and relentless. He needs to burn through all your potions quickly. He has the standard one-shot abilities. He needs to force out your auto revive guts and revive potions quickly. His attacks can instill debuffs that lock skills and SBAs. He needs to punish you for face tanking any attacks that don't one-shot. His 12 labors mechanic lowers your max HP if failed. He needs to make you more susceptible to one-shots to bypass your potions early and get into your critical gauge faster. He's designed around all the tools you have for survivability. He has to be. So now that we have all that out of the way, where do those healing spells I mentioned fit in? Well, they don't. At least not in the majority of your playthrough. You may find them useful at first as you get used to the game and the story, and some of the characters just come with healing spells already equipped. But after a while, I started to wonder why they even bothered. Unlike potions, all healing spells do have lengthy cooldowns, animations, and some require you to aim and hope you get all who need it grouped up. Eo's Healing Winds, for example, is a regen and requires you to stay in its AoE while your health slowly goes up, which loses you uptime if you're sticking to it when the boss isn't in it. So you can try and line up that healing spell in Eo just right and have everyone stay in it, or one of you can just tap the group heal potion button. No animation, no cooldown, and it's party-wide. That means no need for aiming. And like I said, everyone has this potion. Everyone can be a healer and use AoE heals. And if they have that potion hoarder, they have multiple. That's not to say healing spells are completely useless. About halfway through the storyline, I realized that I had yet to use a single potion, and so I decided to commit and see how far I can go. I would have healing spells and defense up abilities equipped to my party as replacement. I managed to not only complete every mission in the game, but also defeat Lucilius while I'm under gear doing so, and I've only had 4 defeats, 3 of which were from Lucilius himself. So healing spells are indeed viable. In fact, the game appears completely playable with them being your main source of healing. The thing is, potions just work better and make them feel redundant and obsolete with how much better they work. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have lost a single fight had I been using them. The game isn't exactly difficult after all. My guess is that they wanted to give you something for when online, since you cannot be guaranteed someone will join you with the healing spell equipped, let alone the healer altogether. But because of how they tackle this problem, they now have to create bosses with this amount of survivability in mind. To not do so would mean you're not in really real danger of failing and can probably brute force your way through the content, which is something I see plenty of people doing with just potion order alone. And so it makes me curious how they'll handle bosses in the future. Can we expect fast combos and one-shots as the continued standard? There's another part of the character's kits I'd like to go over, but before I do, I'll need to mention one of the biggest issues I have with the game, the damage cap. Remember when I said you could build however you want depending on your playstyle? Well, hold on to your juice box because that's not actually the case. Damage cap does exactly what you think. It's a cap to your damage output. I remember when I first found my first damage cap sigil. I don't think I was even max level yet, but I remember thinking to myself, I definitely won't be needing this anytime soon, if at all. I figured I'd have to be really invested in damage to the point of taking away any defense and going glass cannon before I hit that cap. And that's on top of being max level and maxing out my skill tree, known as the masteries in the game. And here's the thing, the problem with the damage cap isn't that it exists. The problem is that, in reality, I was probably hitting it even then. It's actually absurdly easy to hit that cap in this game, and even if I take off all my sigils and use my weakest, non-damage focused weapon, I would still be hitting that cap. Meaning all I have to do to reach the cap for my damage is level up and max out my skill tree. You just have to do the bare minimum, and you're capped even before then. And the game doesn't exactly make any effort to communicate this to you. You just have to notice it. Notice your damage isn't moving. I actually did another sweep of the tutorial menu to see if this was ever brought up, or you could learn about it in the game itself. The answer is no. In fact, you will likely only find out via third-party sources that the gold flash around your damage numbers is the indicator that you're damage capped. The way I found out is by stumbling upon a YouTube video in the recommended section. Now let's get back to the character abilities. Some characters have skills that buff the damage of the party or even lower defense of the enemy. The thing is, if your damage is capped, which is almost guaranteed, then you do not benefit from these abilities. Your damage will not move. And so these abilities become almost useless, at least in the majority of cases. I think that's why the majority of these attack up abilities also come with defense up. They either took this into account or didn't want to have to separate defense up and attack up abilities. But it could be both. There are other decisions that make it feel like the damage cap being as low as it is a deliberate decision. Before I explain that, I want to add a final note about these character abilities. Every character besides the captain has 8 abilities. But because the healing and resurrection spells, yes, there are even resurrection spells, are redundant and how much survivability you have, and attack up buffs are rendered useless from the damage cap, some of these characters don't have 8 skills. They actually have 5 or 6, especially since some of these skills can be pretty niche. Now going back to damage cap, with how it is, you're pretty much obligated to invest in raising it, substantially. There's no opting out of this. Otherwise, not only you're not dealing more damage as you progress the game, some of your character's skills just aren't working. In fact, they probably added supplementary damage to personal attack buffs to account for this. Add on to the fact that you need to max them out to level 65 in total, and may still find yourself hitting the cap, and these damage cap sigils may as well be regular damage sigils. But you'll need 4 maxed out to do this. Keep track of these sigils as we move forward. Remember, you have 12 equipable slots. And the thing about these sigils is that they often do not appear with secondary slots, and they do not appear as secondaries like Potion Hoarder does. And so the final weapon you get, of course, the Terminus weapon, also gives you a 100% boost to your damage cap on top of the sigils. The caveat here is that your HP needs to be 45k or below. Sounds like a great boost, right? And it is. I saw my damage almost double with no added damage sigils. The thing is though, when I maxed out the Terminus weapon and unequipped all sigils except the raised damage cap, I found my character was still hitting this cap. That means the 100% from the Terminus weapon, the 226 from my sigils, and another 20% from overmasteries wasn't enough for the regular unbuffed damage to not be capped. I don't know about you, but that sounds a bit absurd to me. At least make me work a little bit for it. Now, have you noticed a pattern with damage cap? You probably remember when I said they probably made a deliberate decision to have it as low and easy to reach as it is. I think what solidified that notion for me is that the newest sigils that drop from the newest fight, Lucilius, aren't even new sigils. They're better damage cap sigils. Yeah, they come with a little gag at that when we rank to 15, but do these even really matter? This isn't going to change how you play. Unless you just shield one, you're probably not even going to notice the effect. It's as if the damage cap was implemented the way it is because they are treating it as a de facto progression in your damage, and damage is the only thing that matters. Would it have hurt to have something with a bit more utility than just more damage? Something to change up how you play? As it stands, my reward for defeating Lucilius several times is that instead of killing him for 3 minutes, I kill him in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. He's a fun fight, but I wish the reward was a bit more, well, less boring. If I just wanted to deal more damage, like I said, I'd just go play Final Fantasy 16, something with more depth in how I deal that damage on an individual level. I think I want to stop with that though. When it comes to the systems, I think I've made my point. There are plenty of designs in the game that appear to just contradict each other. You have a huge number of sigils and effects for build diversity and expression, but well over half of them just simply don't work due to damage cap. You have healing and resurrection spells in the game, but potions and certain sigils render them obsolete. You have a combat system that emphasizes teamwork, but all progression and builds center around personal damage and even personal utility. It's something I'm still wrapping my head around even. But let's list off some positives again to end on a high note. The graphics for starters are stunning. Beautifully rendered cutscenes and environments are regular. The animations are flawless, the characters move with grace and power and all feel distinct from one another. Add on the wonderful physics, and the characters themselves and how they present just adds to the overall presentation. When it comes to the attention to detail, this game is a sight even on the smallest things. Now I think I'll stop right there. There's more I want to talk about, such as the story and incredible music, but I want to have that for a future video. I also want to talk about individual characters, bosses, even the grind in general. So if you liked the video, it would mean a lot to me if you left a like and subscribed. And if you're interested in hearing my thoughts in those future videos, be sure to hit the bell icon so you know when they drop. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.